time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoy every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station, and it's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, thanks for joining me. It's Friday, March 14th. It is Lady B's birthday today. She has rightly taken today off to spend time with her family. The lovely Paul Shivari is back at the studio, filling in quite ably for Lady B. So, lots going on. It's Friday. I know this should be the day where we're like, oh, let's take a look back at the week. Let's figure out how we're going to have fun this weekend. But no. Senate is going to be voting on this continuing resolution that sets up the budget vote. And God help us, but within the hour, maybe within the half hour, Donald Trump is going to make a speech about law and order. Oh, God. The president that has 34 felony convictions is going to be making a speech about law and order. And let's just take a moment to savor the irony of that. Oh, I know it's a little painful, but just, rub your forehead or your temples. And the felon president is going to be making a speech about law and order. God only knows. God only knows what that's going to contain, because you know what he's been doing lately. Mr. Law and Order President has been going after law firms. What, you say? Law firms? What? Why? How? He's been going after any law firm that had anything to do with any kind of legal action against him. One of the law firms he's going after gave support to Jack Smith. They didn't prosecute the cases, but when Jack Smith needed some support, they gave him some support. So he is now going after these law firms. One of them, he's two major Washington law firms that have had anything to do with anybody who he perceives to be an enemy. He's going after them. One law firm already went to court and got an injunction against the nonsense that Donald Trump was trying to rain down on them. Oh, but I digress. I'm sorry. I got waylaid from what's bigger that's going on today, but just keep that in mind. He's going to make a speech about law and order. He's going after law firms who have represented any kind of client that he has perceived to have gone after him or thwarted him in any way. So you think something's going wrong, you get a law firm to defend you. Now the president is saying, oh, well, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Big law firm. It's just, it's painful. It is painful. Earlier today, CNN did a report about the district, the suburb in Florida, where a lot of these Venezuelans live. It's a suburb of Florida, and it went overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Overwhelmingly, they voted for Trump. These were the Venezuelans who were the ones who went and did a press conference a while back saying, oh, we were lied to, we were betrayed. So there, the reporters there, and this woman is saying like, oh my God, these are great people. They did everything right. They were immigrants, yes, but they went through the legal process. They were promised, they were given temporary protected status. They're getting jobs, they're paying taxes. But apparently, even though the Biden administration had made all that happen for them, they still, in that area, voted overwhelmingly for Trump. And now, Donald Trump wants to deport them. Oh, my! I'm feeling a decided lack of empathy for these folks. I should be like, they were sold a bill of goods. They were trusting. Democrats didn't do a good enough job. No, they didn't do a good enough job of doing the research into who they were voting for. It doesn't take a PhD to sit down with the internet for 15 minutes and Google the candidates. Where have they been? What have they done? What have they accomplished? Oh, my goodness, Donald Trump, he was actually president before. Oh, he was a bad one. He lied to people. Every time he opened his mouth, he lied. And he tried to get rid of people just because of their religion. Oh, maybe we shouldn't vote for him. Here we go, Friday. I should be all like loosey-goosey going into the weekend. And it's back to how's that working out for you? I don't know why you, maybe, you just didn't think a woman could do the job. I don't know what you were thinking, but yeah, Trump's going to deport you. Boo-hoo. You voted for it. I'm sorry. You did. Have a good trip. Oh, my goodness, that is not my bridge-building self, is it? So back to the other big news of the day, other than the fact that the convicted felon who's going after law firms if he doesn't like their clients is going to make a speech about law and order. God only knows where that's going. We have this vote on the continuing resolution. The Senate is going to vote on a continuing resolution. This is the one thing that the Democrats have enough votes to stop. After the continuing resolution is voted on, then the budget comes up for a vote, and Republicans have enough votes on their own. They don't need a single Dem to pass this budget. And I got to tell you, I can't tell you that I am on one side of this issue or the other. I understand, believe me, I understand the people who say, this is something Republicans need to fight at all costs. This is where Democrats need to draw a line. But on the other hand, Chuck Schumer, who was not that long ago saying that he was going to vote against this, has now said that he's going to vote for it. And Never Trumper Charlie Sykes wrote about that today. The title of today's post is Schumer Caves and Probably Made the Right Call. Yeah, this is a time where we want Democrats to throw down the gauntlet and stand strong. I get that. I absolutely get that. But here's what Schumer has said that he is afraid of. He is basically afraid that if the continuing resolution is not passed, there's no Senate budget vote. If there's no Senate budget vote, there's a government shutdown. And he thinks that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are hoping that there's going to be a government shutdown. Here's what Charlie wrote. The options were atrocious. The House Republicans' continuing resolution is a partisan mess and an extraordinary surrender of congressional power, especially over tariffs, to the president. It was a poison pill wrapped in a poop sandwich. But, and I really hate to write this, the alternative was worse because Trump Musk would love nothing more than to shut down the government that they are in the process of dismantling. And as Schumer notes, there was no clear exit from a shutdown. Schumer was afraid that if the Democrats shut down the government, that in the interest of getting rid of the government, getting rid of the bureaucracy, Trump would simply find reasons not to reopen it. Schumer felt there was, quote, no plausible way to win. That also makes sense to me. I understand, you know, if you listen to this show, you know how badly I want Democrats to stand up and scream and protest and try to get into locked buildings and make a fuss, make good trouble every day. And on the surface of it, this seems like a no-brainer. Vote down the continuing resolution or extract concessions from Republicans in exchange for Democratic votes. But Republicans don't want to offer those concessions because they know that basically this situation, as the way a lot of people see it, is a win-win for Trump. Enough Democrats vote to move forward the continuing resolution, the Republicans rubber stamp the budget, and Donald Trump gets a lot of the horrible things that he's after, the social services cuts. It's just, and the District of Columbia, of course, would be in dire straits because they're not even allowed to spend the money they raise locally unless they get congressional approval, which just doesn't happen to be in this budget. No, it's not. So yeah, let's take a stand. Let's draw a line. And what's the other result? The government shuts down, and Trump and Musk have a party behind closed doors. Because are they going to reopen government? Maybe, maybe not. Are they only going to open up the parts of government they like? I'm sorry, kids. But the reality of this situation is that either way it goes, Trump wins. That's where we find ourselves. Chuck Schumer was on with Chris Hayes trying to explain this. And, Chris Hayes was giving him grief. He's like, Schumer was like, this is how it should be fought. And Chris Hayes was like, but you're not fighting it. So who will turn out to be right? Should Democrats have fallen on their swords here and then tried to avert the possible fallout from Donald Trump and Elon Musk singing and dancing and being really happy that Democrats handed them something that makes dismantling government easier? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Chuck Schumer. But I guess if you really pinned me down, I'd have to say, very sadly, that Charlie Sykes makes a lot of sense. That it isn't what we want. We want to fight. We want to go down fighting. But this might be the lesser of two evils. Anyway, as I said, Chuck Schumer joined Chris Hayes, and Chris Hayes was giving him grief about whether or not are you fighting or are you not fighting? Let's just hear what Chuck Schumer had to say.
There's essentially an unconstitutional assault on the government right now, and I think you would agree with that.
There
right?
is.
An assault on the constitutional.
These guys are the worst, and we got to fight them every step of the way. As we say in Brooklyn, Chris, every effing step of the way.
But look, Russ Vought is already telling people, but he's telling people on the floor, we are not even going to listen to this CR. This is a piece of paper that we will impound and rip up the moment it's passed. If that's the case, how is voting for cloture not essentially an imprimatur on the very same assault on the constitutional order.
They're already, even without this CR, they're already doing it.
Right.
Okay? They did it to the Department of Education. But I can tell you, I've been through shutdowns before. It's not that this CR is good. It's not that voting for it is good. It's horrible. But the alternative is worse. And we have to look just a month ahead and see how bad a shutdown would be for all the things we believe in, and how I'd say Trump and Doge and Musk and Vote, they're like drooling with happiness and desire to get a government shutdown. They've said they want it. Why? Not for doing anything good, I'll tell you that. These guys are authoritarians.
So there you have it. A befuddled Chris Hayes saying, you say we should fight them tooth and nail, but you don't appear to be fighting them. And Chuck Schumer not giving an inch, saying, look, they want this shutdown. Why do they want this shutdown? Let's think about that. Let's think about why they want a shutdown. What could they do with a shutdown? And I agree with Chuck Schumer. Ain't nothing good. So, Chuck Schumer, in that same interview, talked about how there are two alternatives and they're both bad. Listen to this.
The AFG union, which is the largest union representing federal workers, they won a big victory today in federal court about those probationary employees who were fired. They came out against the CR, which really surprised me, right? These are the people that seem to have the most skin in the game on precisely the terms you're enunciating. And they said the fact that this CR has no protections that will actually be followed means that we can't support it. If the people whose livelihoods are on the line say you cannot go along with this thing, why are they wrong?
I understand why they're so upset with the CR, but I disagree with them because the shutdown would be worse for their employees. They could just eliminate huge portions of government workers automatically. They could eliminate programs automatically, which they can't do on the CR. The CR has certain spending, and they can screw around with it, and they will. These guys are sons of guns. They're going to do everything they can to hurt the government. You know what they've talked about. Elon Musk, this billionaire who cares nothing about taking people's Social Security away, this guy says that he wants to cut $2 trillion out of the federal government. A shutdown would allow him to do it. And here's another point, Chris. There's no exit ramp. Anyone who wants the shutdown, I've asked them, well, how do we get out of it? Guess who it's up to get out of it? Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Doge. So it's it's two bad alternatives, and I respect people who actually don't want it, vote for the CR. It's awful. But with the alternative being a government shutdown, that's even worse.
So there you have it. I don't know where you fall on this particular issue. Not that it's exactly up for a vote here in here in Radio Land. We can talk about it, but we can't vote on it. We are between a rock and a hard place here. We really are between a rock and a hard place. And it's going to be bad either way. That's the bottom line, kids. It's going to be bad either way. Okay? So what are we going to do? I've said this before, and I will probably say it every day. It's not going to be Democratic leadership that saves us. It really isn't. It is going to be our neighbors, our friends, our fellow passengers on this journey, the lawyers like the ACLU, Mark Elias Democracy Docket. That's who's going to save us. We are going to save ourselves from the bottom up. And yes, I still think as bad as things are, they're going to get worse before they get better. I don't think anybody's going to come after me for doing this little radio show, but I do think that potentially in the very near future, I could be a part of a protest where there are mass arrests. And oddly, I'm okay with that, if that's what it takes. Part of me thinks that I'm leaning toward thinking that Schumer is right about this, because it would be so easy for Schumer just to go with the flow. He knows what Democrats want. Democrats want him to take a stand and say no and, do whatever it takes. That would be playing to the crowd. And he is not doing that. He's taking a stand that he knows will get him in trouble with Democrats, with his own party. And generally, people really only stick their necks out like that if they really, truly believe that they are doing the right thing. I'm sad to say. We have been on this show playing a lot of sound clips from people who are mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. I've advised those of you listening to this radio station, find a cause that means something to you and support it. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Reach out to your local library. Go to the library board meetings. Heck, run for library board. Or at the very least, if you do have an election coming up for library board, vet the candidates and share what you find with your neighbors, with your friends. Because even if you live in a Democratic area, that doesn't mean there isn't going to be somebody running for your school board, your library board, your village board, who isn't a MAGA wingnut. And it doesn't, in my experience, they don't cover their tracks very well. It isn't too hard to figure out who they are. A couple of, a year or so ago, we had a school board election coming up. And very interestingly, two of the people running for school board refused to fill out, how like League of Women Voters fill out this form of, what you think, where you stand. They wouldn't do any of that. They wouldn't do any public appearances. And doing a little bit of internet research, it turns out one of them was like a book banner type. And we can only assume the other person who refused any kind of publicity. No, I'm not going to make any statements. I'm not going to say anything about who I am, but I'm going to put my name out there. That is suspicious. Watch out for those folks. Anybody who's legitimately running for an office wants you to know who they are and what they believe. And if somebody doesn't, if they're trying to hide, they don't do that for no reason. So, we're saving ourselves. This is it. Look to the left of you, look to the right. Those are the people who are going to save you. I've decided that I'm going to rate the weeks, how many puppies it takes to get through a week. Up until today, with this continuing resolution and this ridiculous speech that Trump's going to make on Law and Order, I would have said this was a pretty good week, mostly because I was with my daughter. I would have said it was a one-puppy week. But you know what? If Donald Trump says some things that are really bad, it might be a 2-puppy week. Possibly, he might even push it to a 3-puppy week. 3 puppies to get through the week. By the way, the ratings is 0 puppies to 5 puppies. So if we ever have a 5-puppy week, man, those are the ones where you better start thinking about what your future looks like. We are going to take a break. We are going to start taking your calls and reading your texts right after this.
Matter. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am trying to keep a survey here as people are texting in on whether or not Chuck Schumer is doing the right thing by announcing that he is going to vote for the continuing resolution that if passed by the Senate. The continuing resolution needs Democrats, has to have Democrats to pass. But if that passes, the Republicans can pass the budget all by themselves. So far, we're evenly split here in the text line, but I'm gonna keep count. Let's go to the phone lines. Dave from Hoffman Estates is ready to join our conversation. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Yeah, that with the shutting down, and then these guys that's what Trump and them want. That way they can eliminate these things without any kind of a speed bumps. Then it'd be almost similar to like if somebody was striking. Well, you're not part of the company no more.
That's the fear. That's the fear that Trump and Musk will take a government shutdown and run with it.
Yeah, and then we ain't got no friend either with Fetterman. He's kind of taking the mantle from Manchin.
Yeah, I don't know about Fetterman. He has made some what I think he thinks is bipartisanship statements, like I'm going to vote for whoever I think is basically I don't care what my party does. I'm going to make my own decisions. And sometimes I guess I get that, but when your whole party says let's hold the line here, and you're like, I don't think it's so bad, I'm going to vote for it. That's you got to know when to do that. Pardon? Yeah, he went down to Mar-a-Lago. And at first I thought it's because when he went down to Mar-a-Lago, the idea of the Japanese company buying the American steel company was still on the table. And, Philadelphia or Pennsylvania is a big steel state. And all I could think of was, does he think that maybe by going to Mar-a-Lago he can get Trump to, move this deal along? I don't know. John Fetterman doesn't confide in me, but I think John Fetterman is on thin ice.
Oh, God, yeah. Don't you remember back on his first tour, Trump was talking about he was going to get the steel mills going and all that, and in Ohio and that, and they'd find out they don't even have the ovens in there no more.
Nope, they do not.
And you think they would have figured we've been suckered already once, but we're getting him elected. I was reading the thing the other week where veterans voted 6 out of 10 veterans had voted for this guy versus 4 out of 10 had voted for Harris. And this one that did the surveys in all 50 states. Now, I wonder if some of these guys was like in that North Carolina meeting that the guy didn't want to, they don't want to answer, and that's kind of funny. They all say we want to go represent you and be your voice, but yet they don't want to meet.
Yeah. I think that any law enforcement officer who voted for Trump and then saw him pardon all the people who assaulted law enforcement, I think that any veteran who voted for Trump and now is going to see the VA brought to its knees, they've already started eliminating some of the mental health hotline funding. Veterans commit suicide at a much higher rate than the typical population. But let's cut that funding. That doesn't seem very important to me.
Yeah, that was like the one I mentioned about with
anybody who voted for Trump, I think, is going to find themselves in a situation where they really regret the day they did it. I think there's going to be incredible buyer's remorse. And the part that makes me not have any empathy for those folks is that it's not just they are not the only ones who are going to experience the pain. They're dragging the rest of us with them. I don't want to experience the pain because you couldn't be bothered to think past your own nose before you went into the voting booth. I'm sorry.
I found it surprising when that sheriff escorted that veteran out. Doesn't he have a freedom of speech?
Apparently not.
Yeah, and I read or heard something, too, that they plan to fire like 10,000 postal employees and privatize.
Yep.
You know, I guess they want to pick
10,000 postal employees. Yep, that's the newest one.
And so you get these others that remember, and he kept saying that, well, if I get elected, I'll end that Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. Well,
yeah, did you hear him say today that, he's a little disappointed, but he's hoping to either meet in person or talk on the phone to Vladimir Putin. Putin apparently has some concerns, but I'd really like to talk to him.
Yeah.
What's not taking your calls, buddy?
Yeah, Putin's the one that runs the strings on that marionette there. But when he said he could do it in 24 hours, I guess little did we know he meant that 24 hours. That remember when Kiefer Sutherland had that show, 24 Hours?
Yeah.
That's the 24 hours he meant, and the Law and Order he's going to talk about. He's probably going to talk about the show on NBC. It's a great show, Law and Order.
Yeah, really.
Anyway, I think we're off so you get to others. So thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for the call.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Let's go out to Champaign. Carrie is on the line. Hey, Carrie, thanks for the call today.
How you doing, Joan?
So far, so good.
I've been trying to call you for a while, and you had the professor on. I can't think of the guy's name, and you two were talking about the election, but I remember you saying, I believe this boiled down to race and hate, and he didn't quite agree with you. So that's the reason why I called. Let me tell you this reason. This is how I see it. Everybody don't have to see it the way I see it, but this is what I learned over the years. Remember, there was a white drinking fountain, black drinking fountain. You go to the pool, black person touched the pool. We got to clean the water out, clear the water out, put concrete in the pool, get rid of the pool. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when they did all that, what did they give the citizens as far as education, as far as a wage? No, they made them feel special because they gave them a white drinking fountain.
Yep.
And they felt that they were better than the black people.
You may have a crappy life, but at least you're better than those black people.
Exactly. And what did Trump do? He played on those same instincts that politicians have been playing for over the years. And one thing that, if everybody remember and learn, remember Otto Kerner, the Kerner report. It told us, it already told you about the research and on race, about what we were going into, two societies. But one thing about the two societies, it didn't talk about how it really would truly lead us into fascism. And that's, to me, what your professor missed. The research has been done through the Kerner report, and it's proven how if you just keep making the black man or any other minority the boogeyman, white people tend to believe that. And then when you get the news and then you put them on TV every time, first thing, carjackings, robberies,
right.
And all those things.
Because if they can get people mad that somebody's getting something that should be theirs or somebody's taken something that should be theirs, they are less likely to sit up and say, you know what? The corporations and the billionaires are really screwing us over. We got to go after them. You know, the guy who's head of college sports. The other boogeyman is the trans person. I was reading this yesterday. The head of the College Sports Association said there are 510,000 college athletes. That's more than 500,000 college athletes. You know how many are trans out of that 510,000? 10.
How many?
10. 10
boogeymen.
The law that passed in Utah that was banning trans kids from high school sports. You know how many high school athletes identified as trans in that state? One. Then that's why the governor at first vetoed it, but the legislature overrode him. The governor said this bill is aimed at one high school student. This is just wrong and not what we should be doing in government. So, yeah, that's how Republicans get people to vote Republican. They tell them that they're being, no matter how good their life is, they're being screwed over because women and blacks and minority and trans and immigrants are taking what should be yours.
That is true. And the flip side, they used to be called the Dixiecrats, is what they were. And now they're Republicans. Yep. And if everyone would come together and stop letting them bamboozle them, stop listening to that, we will all be fine. But people will have to learn and have to understand this playbook is old and tired, but it keeps on going. And Kamala Harris promised everybody the world. I listened to every speech she gave online. The woman had gave out so many good ideas, so many legitimate ideas, and people just told it. And Donald Trump took a microphone and simulated sex, and people voted for him.
I know.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you for the call, Carrie. I appreciate that. We are going to take a break. We are going to be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Okay, in the text line, the tide has turned. More people saying that Chuck Schumer should have stood with the activist Democrats who wanted no. And somebody said, well, this continuing resolution, what is it? It's basically, bottom line, it's a procedural thing. It's a procedural vote that allows the other vote to happen. Only in the Senate, some votes can be taken and won with a simple majority, and some votes need a 2/3 majority. So that's why I'm saying that this procedural continuing resolution vote, which needs more votes to pass, is the only place that Democrats have an opportunity to make their voices heard. Because the actual, the budget, what's being done, it's really complicated. But the way the budget is being voted on, it only requires a simple majority. And the Republican Party has a majority in the Senate. And it isn't just, I know everybody's talking about how there was this rejection of Kamala because in some states that went for Trump at the top of the ticket, they went for Democratic governors or Democratic congresspeople. That may be true, but not enough of them. We not only handed the keys to the castle to a man who was unfit for any office, let alone the presidency, we gave him a complete pass. We voted in a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate. And so he is unchecked. To some extent, he's being checked by the courts, the third branch of government, but we don't know if they're going to follow those court rulings, and if those court rulings make it up to the Supreme Court. We have no idea what this highly partisan group of folks, at least 3 of whom owe their seats to him, how they will vote. Donald Trump said, I think it was yesterday, you know how he signed an executive order to change the Constitution, which is, of course, not how you change the Constitution. You have to put up a measure. The states have to vote on it. The states have a certain amount of time. You need a certain majority, and that's how you change the Constitution. Not by just writing on a piece of paper, I want to change birthright citizenship. I want it to go away. Donald Trump said yesterday that he would like the question of birthright citizenship and whether or not he has the power to get rid of it. He would like that question to be dealt with by the Supreme Court. I have not heard yet whether or not the Supreme Court has decided to help him out there, take up that case. But yeah, he seems to think, and sadly, with cause, that this Supreme Court is going to rubber stamp what he wants, just the way his Republican Congress and his Republican Senate are doing. I think we're under 600 now, 598, something like that, days till the midterms. Very, very, very long time for us to get through and survive. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Ron is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Hi, Joan. Welcome back.
Thanks.
I remember what Trump said last year. He said that I will do whatever I want to, with or without the approval of Congress. I guess you can add the Supreme Court to that, too.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what he's trying. Yep. And there's a public service announcement now. It's by the head of the Homeland Security, Kristi Noel, and it starts by saying that if you're an undocumented migrant, you'll be deported. And then later on, it says she says that we only want people here who will respect the law, and there should be an addendum to that says this does not apply to Republicans.
Yeah, Kristi Noem. Sometimes I just have no words, Ron. I just have no words. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and also they had the auto show on the White House front lawn this week.
Oh, yeah. Did you go to Washington and buy a Tesla that, that Donald Trump and Elon Musk, as Donald Trump got in the Tesla, he said, it's like a golf cart that goes really fast.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
No. And what if Elon Musk sold appliances instead of Tesla cars? Would there be refrigerators and washing machines on the front lawn?
Heck, yes, there would be, Ron. It would be like going to the Apt warehouse without the popcorn.
There used to be a place called Polk Brothers. They had everything.
Yep. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember Polk Brothers.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the call. And Ron made me remember something that I read earlier. This was posted by the Fox News, of which I call Fox Cable because it's not really news, their national security correspondent. So the national security correspondent on Fox posted a portion of an email that was sent out to TSA, particularly the TSA officers who manage the canine bomb sniffing units. The dogs, not even necessarily the dogs that go to smell whether or not you got pepperoni that you brought in from Europe that you shouldn't have, but the dogs that, not even the dogs really that sniff for drugs, but the dogs that sniff for bombs, or a particular focus here. Here's the email. New guidance effective immediately. Good morning, all. As of the moment, all requests for everything to include vet visits, kenneling, dog food, etc., have been put on hold until we receive further guidance. I apologize for the confusion, but due to new guidance sent out last night, nothing is being approved at this time. Once I receive an update, I'll be sure to share with all of you. Did you catch that? Not just vet visits or kenneling, dog food. The person who reposted this said, guys, they are going to stop feeding TSA's bomb-sniffing dogs, per Fox News national security correspondent. Good God. It just gets more insane by the day. Let's go back to the phone lines. Steve from the Gold Coast is on the line. Hey, Steve.
Yes, it's an interesting story you just brought up. And let's face it, because that story will become a national story, of course, it won't happen because there'll be so much backlash. And like so many other things, the moment it becomes a national story, they'll backpedal on it. Oh, no, we actually didn't mean to do that. We didn't mean to cut that program. Let's get those people back or reestablish that funding. So, it takes this sort of thing. It takes good journalism, getting the story out, and getting enough backlash out there to make sure that at least we can, save some of these things. And then additionally, you had a previous caller who talked about, Kamala's messaging and so forth. And I agree. I think she did a good job But I think that people, in part, fundamentally misunderstand how elections work. People think that elections are about opposing views to a given set of questions. No, actually, a good election strategy is to define what the questions will be. So, in other words, what the election is going to be about is how you win or lose. And they, whether we like it or not, were very successful at defining this presidential election in terms of inflation, in terms of immigration, in terms of crime, in terms of transgender issues. And we were not successful in making it about those things which we should have been discussing. But again, they had control of so much of the media. And as more and more Americans have cut the cable, don't rely on credible news outlets, they're tuning into these wacko sites and social media and so forth. I mean, no matter what we could have said to them, they were not going to believe it. Some studies show that about half of Americans thought that we were in a recession on Election Day. I mean, we were the envy of the Western world in terms of our economy and for how well we had done coming out of COVID compared to anybody else.
What was it? What's that? There's a magazine that I subscribed to for a while, and it was just a little too intellectual for me. It has to do with economics, and their cover was Best Economy in the World, and it was a story about our economy before the election.
Yeah, exactly. But if you would have believed what was being aired on Newsmax or Fox or the crazy right-wing outlet, you would have sworn that, the unemployment rate was 20%, inflation was at 50% a year. It was down to 2.5%. But it had been 9%, and we had managed to lower it to 2.5%. But no one wanted to talk about that. Instead, it was, you're still paying more than you were in 2020. Yes, that's right, because that's not how the economy works. We lowered the rate of growth in inflation. We do not expect to go back to the prices we were paying 5 years ago, because if we did, that would be deflationary, and that would mean that we were in a huge economic decline. And the reality is that, as you pointed out, a lot of these people are only now beginning to realize that, I didn't know that I was getting that subsidy or that I was relying on that, or I thought they were going to cut something else, and instead, they're coming after yours as well.
Yeah,
and,
I didn't know they were going to cut my program because you know why, Steve? Donald Trump said that he wasn't going to. And if I've learned anything in the last 8 years, it's that he can always be believed, right?
Absolutely. And, of course, not only is your program going to be cut, but because on the other side of the table they're talking about tariffs and trade wars, that means that the things that you buy, in addition to not getting certain subsidies, are going to cost you more because of a tariff war. And because of that tariff war, it's likely that, perhaps the job that you have will be cut because, when you impose tariffs on other countries, they impose them on us, which decreases demand for our products, which means that you lay people off and unemployment goes up. It's hard. You're hard-pressed to find somebody who can do so many wrong things on so many issues, domestic and foreign policy. And I can go down a long list in 1 or 2 weeks. But, hey, he managed to do it. And I honestly believe, I think that he has some sort of a Potemkin village of people around him who are telling him that really, 90% of the American people really love you. Don't believe this fake news. They love what you're doing. And, you've got all this support. And when in reality, he's living in this bubble.
Yep. And even when the Wall Street Journal did that article about Trump voters, and 50% of the people they talked to were like, I can't believe I voted for that guy. I feel like such an idiot. But a couple others were like, hey, look at all the stuff he's doing. He's doing so much in these first few weeks. And when the stuff that he's doing starts impacting them, it's going to be the same mantra we hear all the time. I didn't think he was going to come after me. He was supposed to come after all the other people. And you know what I say, folks? You want to find out what the waste in government? The waste is you. You are the waste. You are either getting a check they don't want you to get. You are doing something they don't want you to do. You are the waste. That's what people didn't understand.
Yeah, I wish I had a dime for everyone who decided to reach out to me and say, hey, look what Doe just found. All these tens of thousands of people who are age 175 and over getting a Social Security check. No. People's information is still in the Social Security Administration long after you and I are dead.
And a lot of those are, it was explained to one of the sites, when Donald Trump goes, look at these numbers. Those are data points spread. They are not actual people. They are representations of different ways of looking at the data and different ways of assessing payments. It doesn't mean there are 10 people who are 136 years old. It doesn't mean that.
Exactly. But, again, we go back to, it takes good media, good journalism, good research to point this out and to get these people to backpedal on it. Of course, you and I will hear it, but a lot of the diehard supporters, nobody at Newsmax is going to report, oh, by the way, Doge was misinforming you. They've taken that down from the site, and these are the real numbers. Nope, you're never going to hear it. You're only going to hear when they announce the craziness, but you're never going to hear the retraction.
Right, exactly. Steve, thank you so much for the call. Really appreciate it. Going to squeeze one more call in. Tony's on the line from Chicago. Tony, thanks for calling in.
How are you, Joan?
Good,
Hi.
Good.
Listen, I'm just wanted to give you a little humor here. What if Illinois, New York, and California declined to pay federal taxes?
I'm right there with you. I'm really ready for a big action. The only downside to something like that is if a state like New York said, we hate Donald Trump, we think he's ruining everything, we're not going to pay any more taxes, that potentially could give Donald Trump an opening to say, because I think Donald Trump would love to send the military into Democratic cities and Democratic states. That might give him an opening to say, oh, they're violating all these federal laws. I'm declaring a military emergency.
Remember, he's a king, and we fought a king over no taxation without representation.
That's right. And I think we're going to have to fight again, Tony. I honestly do. Whether that's physical fighting or just taken to the streets or showing up at congressional and Senate and local offices, whatever it takes. I think we're already fighting again, and we're going to have to fight harder and bigger. Yeah, isn't that something to look forward to? Happy weekend, Tony! And thank you for the call. We need to take a break for news. We're going to be back with much more of your calls and texts till 3:30 after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Somebody sent me a blurb. There's going to be another Tesla protest in Lisle Tuesday, the 18th. You can Google Tesla takedown Lisle. I think it's 4:45 to 6. There's going to be a protest. Also got a text, Canada should annex the United States. Then we'd have good health care. I can't remember if this was Charlie Sykes or somebody else was writing about this obsession Trump has and apparently keeps repeating about how Canada should be the 51st state. Canada, which even the people in Trump's administration acknowledge is a sovereign country. Canada is a sovereign country. But the speculation was that even if it started off as bombast or even a joke, Trump has repeated it so many times that either he truly believes it or it is potentially a sign of his cognitive decline. I saw a transcript of one of his recent statements on Canada. To call it rambling would be being kind. It was like, we don't get anything from them. We don't get anything from them. We don't get anything from them. So, why, they need us. They need us. We don't get anything from them. They need us. They should be with us. We could really help them out. Canada is a major supplier of lumber to the United States. I don't know if these tariffs are going to affect paper prices. You know, one of the uses of wood other than building homes, which will be more expensive, is to make certain products like a paper. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it is just a flat-out coincidence. But I share this with you because it kind of made me sit up and take notice. You know, sometimes I quote the Wall Street Journal. I have a digital subscription, except for Saturdays. I like to look at all the pictures in my hands. So I get the Saturday Wall Street Journal delivered. And I got a notice that it's possible my paper delivery from the Wall Street Journal may be interrupted due to a supply chain shortage. Huh? It's a newspaper. It's made of paper and ink. There's not a lot of supply chain there. Is there a sudden ink shortage I haven't heard about? Or could it possibly be that knowing these tariffs and retaliatory tariffs are coming down, that the people they buy their paper stock from have decided to raise their prices? And they want to look around and see if they can find something cheaper. What supply chain issue prevents a printed paper from showing up? Maybe there's no grease for the machines that print the paper. You think that's it? Supply chain shortage. You may not get all of your papers because of a supply chain shortage. That's just weird. Maybe somebody who knows more about stuff than I do can shoot me a text and explain what a paper that's made only of paper and ink, what sort of supply chain issue is coming into play there. In the meantime, let's go back to the phone lines. Ron is on the line from Michigan. Hello, Ron.
Hi, Joan. Joan, I'd like to make a speculation. I did this before when the ship crashed into the bridge in Baltimore Harbor. I contended it was a Chinese sabotage act, and but the most recent attack of a cargo ship on a U.S. Fueling ship, which was carrying jet fuel and other vital fuels. I guess it was probably going to our forces in Europe or someplace. But the ship that crashed into it was a captained by a Russian national. The ship was crashed into broad daylight. All radar systems on the attack ship were turned off, so it plowed right in broad daylight to an American fueling ship. And I contend with our proxy war with Russia that this is an open attack.
Where did that happen? I was on a news blackout while I was with my daughter. Where did that happen?
It happened a couple of days ago. It was in an area of England, I believe the English Channel. And like I said, broad daylight, no fog, no nothing. And in my opinion, it was a deliberate crash into. And what are you going to do about it? Plain and simple. It's a bold move, and they're striking at us. And with Trump and the Russian delegation occupying the White House now, there'll be no investigation, of course, that goes anywhere if there's any grain of truth to what I'm speculating about. But it's just something to put in your pipe and smoke.
Well, at 3:30, I have a new guest. We've heard his brother before, and his brother, Jeffrey Korn, keeps saying we should have Glenn Korn on, and we have him on today. Glenn Korn is somebody who comes from intelligence and security, and can speak to stuff going on in the Middle East, national security, security that has to do with Russia. I'm going to ask him, about, because stuff like this surfaces all the time. You see something that appears to be an accident, but you wonder if there's more to it. Maybe he can give us some guidelines for when we look at these events, how to know if there's more to it or if it's just a straightforward accident. I'm gonna ask him that. That's he's coming up at 3:30 today.
Because the attack on the Baltimore Harbor, that was a historic significance because it's named after Francis Scott Key Bridge or something like that, and it's going to take years to try and repair the damage that the Chinese, I contend, attacked. And it's you watch and see. A couple of months down the line, there's going to be another attack. It can be looked upon as, it's completely innocent, an accident. Yeah, right. Not in these times.
Well, let's find out. I'm going to ask Glenn if there's any kind of litmus test we can put to these incidents to find out which ones might actually mean more, or maybe that's the whole point of doing secret stuff, is that people like you and me never find out what's really going on. Thanks for the call, Ron. I really appreciate it. We have more callers and more stuff, but we need to take a break. Let's get to it right now.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I am taking your calls and reading your texts. Also, Donald Trump did his big speech, and it made no bones about the fact that it was going to be a political speech from the Department of Justice. And I know this is going to shock you. I know this is not going to shock you. But he said, there's lots of bad people in the DOJ, and he's going to root them all out. And guess what he means by bad people? Anybody who has ever, in any capacity, worked on any case that Donald Trump perceives to be against him is a bad person. There's lots of corruption in the DOJ, and we're going to weed it all out, and I just want you all to know that. Do you think most people believe there's lots of corruption in the DOJ? Also, by the way, it was also an opportunity, again, for him to go after Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden had nothing to do with the operation of the DOJ. It didn't run it like his own personal law firm, which Donald can't believe, because why? Why would you do something like that? To the point where the DOJ prosecuted Biden's son. Yeah, I'm sorry. But it's Biden, Biden filled the DOJ with bad people, corrupt people. Because, the DOJ, yes, I know Merrick Garland appointed a special prosecutor, which means that the DOJ was not actively involved in my prosecution, but they had help. Jack Smith had help. I'm going to go after the law firm that helped Jack Smith. I'm going to go after anybody in the DOJ who had anything to do. You went over to the copy machine, you made copies for Jack Smith, boom, you're out of here. You're corrupt. I don't imagine there are too many people in the sound of my voice, since we tend to fall on the liberal side of issues. I don't imagine that we have a lot of people listening right now who voted for Donald Trump. But is this really what you voted for? Is this really what you voted for? I don't think it is. Sure, let's go after waste. But you know what? The Democrats would have been happy to participate in any kind of an audit or task force looking for spending excesses, redundancies. Did you really want to lose every government service? I don't think so. did you really want people who are not full-fledged citizens disappeared into the night? You may not like that Columbia University guy who was leading a protest, but he is documented. He's a legal resident of the United States. He wasn't born here. He has a green card. That makes him a legal resident. And unless he's convicted of some terrible crime like terrorism, he is a legal resident in this country. ICE showed up in the middle of the night and took him away like we were some sort of banana republic. A bunch of people protested. What happened? And they were told if they didn't disperse, they would be arrested. They got arrested. Is that really what you voted for? Is that really what you voted for? I don't think so. I don't think so. But that's what we've all got. And I think it's time you joined us in the resistance. You have a lot to atone for. Let's go back to the phone lines. Nancy is on the line from Oak Lawn. Nancy, thank you so much for your call today.
Hi, Joan. I'm sorry, but I don't think anybody's asking the right question.
What is it, Nancy?
Why are we sitting here in the middle of all this garbage? I'm going to try to control myself here because I'm just sick and tired of, the Democrats and the talking heads and everybody else sitting there telling me all the stuff that the felon and the Muskrat and all those other maggots are doing. We know what they're doing. We, the people, which I consider the majority, who has never ruled in this country and has never won because of the broken two-party system that hasn't changed in 250 years. From the get-go, it was never created to support democracy. It is destroying it. I'm surprised it took this long. When you have only two parties and you don't have a choice, a real choice, because I've been voting for over 50 years now. And they told me when I first started voting, we have to get rid of the filibuster. We have to get money out of politics. We have to expand the Supreme Court, all this stuff. And guess what? 50 years later, I'm still waiting. They are not representing we the people. The TLTL party, which is what I call the Dems, too little, too late, after they go out and lose an election, which that's the really ridiculous thing. Do you realize how stupid we look that this felon actually not only made it into the White House, into our White House in the first place and desecrated it, he got in there a next time and he gets to desecrate it all over again, only worse. And guess what? We're the fools because they are not fighting him properly. And it's not just him. Mm-hmm. The entire party. We have no choices because, you know what? The Democrats don't need a bigger tent. They need more tents. We can't even get ranked choice voting, for Christ's sakes. At least that would make the people feel that their choices are being looked at.
I'm a big supporter of ranked choice voting. And, Nancy, I really thought we would get a strong third party when people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, people like Joe Walsh, people like Charlie Sykes. I really thought that people who identified as fiscally conservative, but they saw the insanity that was Trump. I really thought that they would come together and create a viable alternative party. And I've tried to ask them, when I talked to Joe Walsh, why that didn't happen. And it seemed to me that they kept holding out hope that they could make the Republican Party be what it used to be and not just a cult of Donald Trump. I think a lot of them realize now that is not going to happen. but I see no move on anybody's part. And if you think if anybody could come together and make a viable party that could get serious donations and candidates, it would be some kind of conservative anti-Trump party. But I don't know. It doesn't seem to be able to happen.
Well, you know what? It still all goes back to the broken two-party system, because I was foolish enough. You think you were expecting things. When COVID started, I was foolish enough to think, you know what, this may be a good thing. The silver lining is going to be, or I shouldn't say when COVID started, he screwed that up too, and he killed my brother, but that's another story for another time. When he first got into our White House, and don't ever tell me that he won any kind of election legitimately, but as long as there's foreign operatives involved in our elections, we're never going to have a free and fair election again. Anyway, when he first got in there, I thought, you know what, this might be a good thing, because I was thinking along your lines. I thought, you know what, the good Republicans are going to split off and form another party, and the Democrats, who always eat their own, they're going to separate too. They're going to split into progressives and moderates, because the moderates are always ignoring, and this is why we're here now, because in 2016, they blew it too. They ignored Biden. He would have been in there for 2 terms if they would have gone with him in 2016, and he would have still been, even though he is in good condition now, because, you know, cons lie about everything, and Democrats don't fight back, and they accept it. And and forget the free press. We lost that a long time ago. We have corporate-owned press now, and that's why we got the felon 24/7, and we got nothing. You know, we heard nothing about the Democrats. And now we're in this position. We're painted into a corner where no matter what they do today with that vote, we're screwed. It's because of the broken two-party system. And then I'm told nothing's going to change because nobody has the money and the power to get a strong third party going. Well, you know what? There it comes back to the money.
Yeah. Nancy, I gotta move on. I'm running out of time, and I want to try to squeeze one more caller in. But thank you for joining the conversation today. You've got a lot of important stuff to say. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim from Chicago is on the line.
Hi, Joan.
Hello, Jim.
Weekend.
Happy weekend.
Yeah, I hope so. It'd be lovely if I had one. But consider the money being spent on this Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. Now, if you gave every voter $1,000, that would be $1 million, and they're spending several $1 million on this race. And what I'd be interested in is why? Who are the people giving the money? Why are they giving the money? Why do they want to influence this particular judge who is absolutely abhorrent to the human race? Why? That's what I want to know. And when does this end? I mean, think about it, Joan. I mean, I remember when, money was always important in politics, but now it's become gargantuan, where one or two people can. You think about it. If you stood outside of that voting booth and gave somebody $1,000 or $2,000, they probably vote any way you wanted to vote. So they know that. So my point is, but you know what the point is. The point is this is getting absolutely absurd. This money in politics is getting absurd. We know the Citizens United was a nightmare. But we're in the same boat, Joan. We've got to get back to even keel here and then talk intelligently about how getting money out of politics, because we're never going to have a result that we can believe. Anyway, you have a great weekend, Joan.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Jim.
Anyway, take care, though.
You have a great weekend. We are going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Jeffrey Korn's brother, Glenn, and ask him some of the questions you guys have been asking me right after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am very pleased to welcome a new voice, sort of new voice, to our radio station. We've talked to his brother, Jeffrey Korn, quite a bit. And Jeffrey always says, you need to talk to my brother, Glenn. He's got a really interesting intelligence, security, point of view area of expertise. So we were finally able to track Glenn down from his many travels, and he joins us today. Hello, Glenn. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I have to warn you, Jeffrey's one of my favorite guests, and you've got big shoes to fill.
I know that, having grown up with him as his younger brother, and I stress younger brother, I know that for sure. He's great.
He is great. Before we get to any of the things that I wanted to ask you, I have had people calling in today and texting in today. People are, in these uncertain times, very suspicious. Somebody called in about a ship, filled with fuel that was hit by another ship, captained by a Russian, and wasn't that probably some sort of clandestine attack? Somebody else texted in today that most of the times when we see these international accidents or crashes, that there's always more to the story. You spend your life working in the intelligence circle. For those of us who are just regular civilians, how are we to know when or if any of these incidents really have greater ramifications?
That's a great question. I would say first, I would caution people not to be too conspiratorial. I think this country has gone down the path of believing in conspiracy theories in a way that I never saw growing up. And having worked in a lot of countries where conspiracy theories are very popular and spread very quickly and then take hold and have influence on political decisions and life decisions, I think that's a little concerning for me. I trust that the U.S. government will tell people when it's appropriate if an event is basically sabotage or some other hostile government or non-state actor taking action to harm the U.S. or U.S. interest. But many times I think when there are just accidents that happen. So, and when it comes to the U.S. government, I don't think the U.S. government is as nefarious or is capable of being as nefarious as some people believe.
In other words, by believing that there's some deep conspiracy, they're giving people more credit for being able to contain a big conspiracy?
Yes, that's my personal view.
When you say you've been in other countries where you've seen these conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, my personal belief is that a lot of it stems from a lack of faith in institutions providing information. Like if you think that the New York Times and the Washington Post are involved in some sort of government cover-up, well, who do you trust then? Is that plausible, or why do you think when you've seen this happen, it has happened?
Well, it's certainly plausible. I think part of the problem is that, if we look at some of the statistics and the polling, the American people's faith in both the federal government and the media has declined significantly. Unfortunately, I think there's some basis for that. Some things that have happened in this country in the last, say, 6 years, personally for me have caused a lot of concern that the things that happen would erode people's faith in the government and media. And if we talk about like regions, I'll just give the example, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a fabrication. It was a disinformation campaign run by the Tsarist Okhrana to take pressure off the Tsarist government for its failed policies and place the blame on the Jewish population of the Russian Empire. That is a conspiracy kind of theory that took hold, and some people to this day cite it as, people will say, in my career, I've had people say, have you read this? This is a conspiracy by the Jewish people. And you have to tell them that was a fabrication. It was a lie. But they don't know that because it spreads and it seeps into people's thinking for so many years. That kind of conspiracy theory is extremely dangerous, as we know.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift over to some of the parts of the world where you have particular expertise, which is, as near as your brother described it, pretty much the whole world, Glenn. So let's start with the Middle East and what is going on there. Israelis, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on with Iran and Hezbollah. How do you see that region of the world?
Well, currently, first of all, I think it was a mistake for some people to think that we could ignore the Middle East. The Middle East was calm, and that we could focus all our attention on other parts of the world, maybe China, which is a tendency for people in Washington to want to do for various reasons. But the Middle East, we saw on 7 October that heinous terrorist attack launched against Israel and the Israelis and American citizens on that day, which was part of a plan, in my opinion, sponsored by Iran to undermine and destroy the state of Israel. There's been a lot that's happened after that, and there's actually some positive developments, I would suggest, in the Middle East that resulted from that, including work that the Israelis did in Lebanon to significantly undermine Lebanese Hezbollah, which was Iran's number one proxy, as part of their axis of resistance. The Iranian regime has been, how do we say this, weakened for a number of reasons, and I think the Iranian regime right now is very nervous because of what the Israelis did, kind of humiliating them in their proxy wars against Israel, and then the Israelis demonstrating that they could strike targets in Iran itself with relative ease. And then now with the Trump administration back in, an administration that had pursued the maximum pressure campaign before, during the first Trump term, I think that the Supreme Leader is probably very nervous because, the country's got economic problems. Militarily, it's demonstrated to its proxies that it doesn't have the throw weight or the influence that it pretended to have. And their proxies are now struggling, which I think is a good thing. We look at other parts of the Middle East. I mean, we've mentioned Gaza. The Israelis certainly have a lot of work to do there. The international community has a lot of work to do there. The issue of Palestine, of the Palestinians, is one that has been it requires serious attention and, in my opinion, some creative solutions. It's not clear whether, Gaza's not going to go away anytime soon. The Palestinian issue is not going to go away anytime soon. In Syria, we saw some positive changes in November, late last year, the collapse of the Assad regime. But, that regime was filled by a new group of political leaders who have some connections with extremists, both Syrian extremists and international extremists. And, of course, now the situation is becoming unstable again in Syria. So we saw, I think about 10 days ago, there was a series of attacks launched by the Alawite community, remnants of the Assad regime against the new regime. And everybody's watching what's happening there with great concern, and they should. In the Gulf, generally stable, although, the threat from Iran remains very real. And if we talk about the Middle East, we always have to watch what's happening in Turkey. Mm-hmm. Not so much the Turks are designated, at least by the U.S., as being part of Europe, but they're right on the border there, and they have a lot of influence in the region. Some positive things, some negative things. By the way, I'll mention to your readers, a lot of people don't pay attention to this in the United States, but it looks like Azerbaijan and Armenia, two countries in the South Caucasus, are moving closer than they've ever been to signing a peace agreement and establishing maybe diplomatic relations after years of being in a state of war, over 30 years.
Signing an agreement with one another, not an outside country.
Right, with one another. which would be a really important step forward for the region. And
how would that affect the region? What would this new alliance? Would it be allied more Western, more Russian, more whatever?
Sign a peace agreement and they open up relations. One of the most important things that will happen is that the Turks will open the border to Armenia and trade will be able to flow between Armenia and Turkey, which is a very positive thing for Armenia. It's a positive thing, I would suggest, when we say the West, like for NATO, for the West. It will undermine Russia's ability to keep Armenia isolated, which they did for years. So the only countries that were benefiting from the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, in my opinion, were Iran and Russia. And I hope very much that this agreement can be reached, because it will be good for the people of Azerbaijan, it will be good for the Armenian people, and it will be good for, I would say, the Western alliance.
Glenn, the countries that you're talking about, you're right. Americans, I mean, let's face it. You know, a lot of Americans, they're lucky if they know where Florida is or, you know, Montana, let alone what is going on in the parts of the world you're talking about. So tell us, give us a real basic sort of primer of what we need to know about countries like that and what they're doing and the big picture.
That's a really tough question because there's so many parts of the world we need to be paying attention to.
Pick your top two.
Wow, the top two. I mean, first, the new administration is putting a lot of new emphasis on the Western Hemisphere, which I think is great. They're taking a hard look at what's happening, in the Western Hemisphere, in Latin America, a region which has gotten, which pretty much been ignored or gotten very little attention for far too long. So I think that's very positive and very important because it is in our hemisphere. I mean, it's our backyard, as we say. Other regions, I mean, I can't pick two because it's all interrelated. And I say this often, the United States is facing a number of threats by countries that are cooperating with one another. And you could say that we are even in a state of war with some of these countries because they see themselves as being at war with the United States. So it's almost impossible to say, you have to look at what this region or that region. It's all interconnected. Our challenges with the PRC are interconnected with the challenges or the threat that we face from Russia. The challenges from Russia are connected with Iran because they've aligned themselves with each other. And that's just the reality. And then when you talk about, average Americans, I always used to tell foreigners, I spent over 20 years working overseas, and I still travel quite a bit. And I always remind most foreigners, most Americans came to the United States to get away from all the complications and the intrigue and the complexities of Middle East or, Eurasia. I don't blame Americans. I can understand why people just want to live their lives and not be bothered by the problems of other countries. But the reality today is we can't live like that. The world is interconnected, and we've got to pay very close attention to everything going on around us. And going back to my original point, that is pretty much everything and everywhere. So Azerbaijan,
everything,
Armenia,
everywhere, all at once.
All at once. And that's, I think that the former director of the CIA, Bill Burns, said when he was still in that job, he's never seen the world so complex and maybe dangerous. And I agree with them 1,000%. We're living in a very, very dangerous and complex world, and you can't just wish that away.
No. Glenn, we need to take a break. I'm talking with Glenn Korn. His brother Jeffrey is on with me all the time. Glenn is an expert in intelligence and security, and we are going to continue our conversation right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with Glenn Korn. He is an expert on intelligence and security challenges all around the world. And Glenn just returned from 3 weeks in Ukraine. Am I allowed to ask what you were doing, Glenn, or is that top secret?
No, nothing top, no, not secret. All overt and all open for people to ask. I was there with first of all, I represent an energy company based in Turkey, and I was there for them, and because they're very interested in helping rebuild the Ukrainian energy grid. Great company called Controlmatic. And then I was there with also some college friends, former colleagues, and we go and we just want to talk to the Ukrainians, find out what's going on, let the Ukrainians know the American people have not forgotten them, will not forget them. So we've had a lot of great meetings while we were there, and then at the end we joined a delegation that was led by General David Petraeus.
Really?
Yeah, and he brought a group of folks with him, and we had a series of meetings with the Ukrainian government officials, and that was really a pleasure because he's fascinating to be with. He's brilliant, and it was just great to be with him in those meetings.
Well, let's set aside General Petraeus for a minute. Talk about the conversations that you had with regular Ukrainians. What concerns, what did they want you to know?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, one, the Ukrainians want peace. The Ukrainians want this war to end. And almost every Ukrainian we talked to, and by the way, I was there in September, I was there in April, May, so we go frequently. And progressively, I've seen that the desire or the expression of interest in coming to a ceasefire and a resolution to this war has grown. The people want to make peace, but they want to do it in a way that protects them from further aggression from Russia, which has aggressed them and attacked them. No justification for what the Russians have done and what they're doing, including to the civilian population and to the infrastructure of Ukraine. People, of course, are very thankful for the assistance the United States has given them, and they are hopeful that assistance will continue. But they also have started to recognize that people in the United States are also very weary of, what is often referred to as forever wars. And many Ukrainians would tell us, look, like, we don't want this war to go on forever either. And we want to get back to the United States. So when we talk about the rare earth mineral deal, many of Ukrainians are saying, we want this. We want to actually be able to give something back to the American people, and we want American business here. We want Americans here to do business, which has been something Americans have been very hesitant to do because of the war. But many people are hopeful that if a ceasefire is signed, that Americans will start going to Ukraine and doing more business because they believe, the Ukrainians that we spoke with, believe that would have a positive impact on their country for many reasons.
Were they aware of Donald Trump's recent statement that Ukraine was the aggressor and not Putin, and that Ukraine started the war?
Of course, the Ukrainians are following all that very closely. I would say that when we were there in September, many of the Ukrainians we spoke with were very hopeful that Donald Trump would win the election because they thought that he was the president that would be tough enough and decisive enough to bring this war to an end. So they're very concerned, of course, with anything that American politicians say about Ukraine. They put a lot of emphasis on the relationship with the United States. And, of course, people are concerned now that the United States may be turning away from Ukraine, although I think in the last few days there have been some very positive developments.
Like what?
Well, the meetings in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the turning back on the intelligence and military assistance, I think that's very welcome by the Ukrainians. And personally, I think it's very good that we're back to, supporting them the way we were doing before.
I'm curious. You said that some of the Ukrainians, or maybe more than just a sum, were hoping that Donald Trump would win the election because they thought that he could bring the war to an end. Were they unaware of the close relationship he has always had with Vladimir Putin and how he has often been an apologist for Putin? I mean, he may do everything he can to end the war, but it may be on terms that are very unfavorable to them. Did that not enter into the equation?
Well, I think the Ukrainians made it very clear that they didn't want to get dragged into U.S. politics. And I would say that, this claim that Trump is close with Putin, has always been very close with Putin, is, in my opinion, a great exaggeration. I don't think that Trump had the close relationship that he was accused of having by many in the U.S. Arguments that I think were more political.
Wait a minute. You still feel that way even after what happened with Zelensky in the White House and the way that Zelensky was basically ambushed at what was supposed to be just a quick photo op before they sat down for talks? Donald Trump in that meeting echoed every one of Putin's talking points. I mean, there were reports that the Kremlin news media was ecstatic after that.
Well, we could take apart that meeting bit by bit, and if you look at the first, I would say 85% of the meeting, the president of the United States said pretty much everything that we who are supportive of the Ukrainians wanted to hear. I don't think it was an ambush. I know some people, this goes to the conspiracy theory thing I was talking about before. People are claiming it was an ambush. I don't think it was an ambush. I think both sides made some mistakes. I think, the Ukrainian side made some mistakes.
What were their mistakes, Glenn? What were their mistakes?
Well, first, I would not have argued the way that the Ukrainian president did with the U.S. president on camera in a room like that. And I definitely would have not done the meeting in English. I think he should have used a translator. I think before, in the run-up to the meetings, there had been a lot of back and forth about signing this agreement. And my understanding is that the Ukrainian president wanted to come to Washington to do it. Just prior to the meeting, he had a meeting with a group of Democratic congressmen. I don't know if that was the best thing to do just before a meeting with, the president. There's a lot of sensitivities, which, we could talk about, too, that happened during the election.
Glenn, are you saying that Donald Trump yelled at Zelensky because his feelings were hurt because he talked to some Democratic congressmen? Glenn,
no,
please, you sound like a Trump apologist. That was supposed to be a photo spray. Nobody was supposed to talk. They were just supposed to sit there and smile, and then they were supposed to go into the room and start their negotiations. And J.D. Vance and Donald Trump tag-teamed Zelensky. I mean, it was, even some of the newspapers that tend to be very middle of the road or both sides were like, this was an ambush. Zelensky was berated. And I'm sorry, this wasn't Macron, who has nothing to lose, who can laugh and pat Trump on the arm and say, oh, no, actually, that's not true. That's not true, Donald. This was a guy whose country's at war. He can't do that same kind of song and dance. Glenn, please.
Okay, so you obviously have your view of this, and I have a different view. You say it's an ambush. I have no information that it was an ambush. I saw no indication that it was an ambush. I think it was very unfortunate the way the meeting took place, what transpired during the meeting, and I wish it hadn't happened. And, I think both sides bear some responsibility. So, we're just not going to agree on this. And when you say an apologist for Donald Trump, I'm not really sure what that means. What I'm trying to do is break down the meeting and what happened in the lead up to the meeting, what happened after the meeting, and where we are now. I was very concerned when we turned off support for the Ukrainians, and I'm very pleased now that support has been turned back on.
As am I. So I'm glad we could wrap this up with a point of agreement. Glenn Korn, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. And say hello to your brother next time you see him, if you wouldn't mind.
You may see him more than I do, so you do the same for me.
Okay, sounds good. We are about to take a break for news. When we come back, somebody I haven't touched base with for a while, Michael Dorf, who is a Democratic lawyer, and though he probably would blush if I said he was a Democratic strategist, he is, if not an actual strategist, he is a keen observer of politics and Democratic politics. And there is so much that I want to talk to him about because, as you may have noticed, our governor, J.B. Pritzker, has been in the spotlight quite a bit lately. We're going to talk to Michael Dorf about that and other things when we come right back after the news.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm very happy to welcome back to the airwaves Michael Dorf, who is a Democratic lawyer, the kind of behind-the-scenes guy that Democrats listen to very closely and want his advice. Michael, how are you?
Great, Joan. How have you been?
I have been very stressed. I decided to take some time off to go see my daughter. And in that time, I've decided that I'm going to rank the weeks and maybe even the days by how many puppies I need to get through the day. So today wasn't too bad. It was only a 2-puppy day. The ranking is 0 puppies to 5 puppies. And if it's a 5-puppy day, then I'm in dire need of help. So that's my new system. And I offer it to you if you would like to share it with your friends or colleagues. You know, how are you? Oh, I'm 2 puppies today. It's a 1-puppy day. I'm really good.
I think I might use bourbon instead, but I appreciate the idea.
Well, you know, you can use the puppies to describe how well the day is while you drink the bourbon.
Okay.
It's not an either or, Michael. It's not an either or. I wanted to talk to you so much about what is going on. Particularly, I know you really pay attention to what's going on in Illinois. So first and foremost, let's start with, you know him, you love him, you can't live without him, Rahm Emanuel, who certainly seems to be on, I won't say it's a campaign trail, but it is certainly, he's making an effort to remind people of who he is and what he thinks and how he's done. And, you know, he was on Bill Maher. He was on speaking to the Economic Club. He's raising his profile once again. He has said he's not done with public life, but he said he's not necessarily going to run for office again. He might be perfectly happy to run an NGO or some sort of philanthropic enterprise. What do you think of the political future for elected office for Rahm Emanuel?
He definitely wants to run for something, and like everybody else, he's waiting to see what Pritzker does and what Durbin does.
Mm-hmm.
I discount the idea that he would try running for mayor again. I don't think he can. I don't think he could win running for mayor, and it would bring out the African American community. I think would go bonkers and would really organize against him. And he has, I think, much greater strength these days within in the collar counties and the rest of the state than he does if he would try to run just in Chicago.
Well, yeah, what I was thinking about was, because some people were saying, oh, well, you know, he's just positioning himself to run for president. And in a funny way, I think he would almost have less pushback in a run for president than he would in anything in Illinois, because I think even if it's governor, even if it's senator, if it's here in Illinois, don't you think Laquan McDonald is going to just be an albatross for him?
I think so. Certainly, if he ran for mayor, I don't think it would be as relevant in terms of votes if he runs for governor or senator.
Really?
Yeah, I'd be real surprised if he runs for president. And really, with the exception of Trump, people who don't have a political base have not had much success trying to run for president as just a rich individual, which was what he would be. And former ambassador, I don't see it. I think he would bring in an interesting role to any debate, and he would certainly lower the standard of the language, if not the ideas. But he's certainly doing something. And that phrase he used last week, where he said that the Democrats need to be more interested in the classroom than in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah. Don't talk to me about the bathroom or the locker room unless you're ready to talk to me about the classroom. When Bill Maher tried to, talk about the subject of trans kids and trans athletes.
So he's looking for his message. He's trying to hone that down to see what works.
And do you think that message works?
It's going to appeal to a certain middle America, maybe left center, right center, which is that group that says the Democrats. And I think it's a false charge, but the Democrats ignored everybody else because they were caring about minorities like trans people and people of color and he's trying to bring the Democratic Party way back into the center. I'm not sure today's Democratic Party is willing to do that.
Well, that's an idea that has been expressed by others. Notably, I'm thinking Tom Nichols writing in The Atlantic that, in the next round of races, Democrats need to figure out what they did in the past that got them wins, and that's what they have to do. And his argument was that people running as a Democrat are trying to basically please all the different factions inside the Democratic tent, and that's putting them in untenable positions. Thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a very valid comment, and with the exception of Barack, who I think is a unicorn in terms of elections. Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, Southern governors who captured the center were the Democrats who were able to win.
Yeah. Well, we seem to have lost Bill Clinton's ability to win elections. I'm beginning to think that he had a special gift. I remember, was it? Oh my gosh. He was a local political columnist, wrote a book about Clinton running against Dole. And the bottom line, the thing that still sticks with me after all these years, is that Bill Clinton loved campaigning. And Roger Simon and somebody would come up to Bill Clinton after a speech and saying, you sound really good, but I disagree with you completely on this issue. And Bill Clinton would basically put on this incredible, heartfelt, empathetic charm offensive. And by the end of the conversation, the two people would be hugging. Whereas, after he made a campaign speech, Bob Dole used to try to avoid anybody who wanted to ask him a question and just get to the car because he just didn't like it. I think that kind of thing is a gift. And I don't know that we've got a Bill Clinton amongst us now. Do you see anybody?
Yeah, Governor Beshear in Kentucky, I think, is a possibility.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah, I think he is. He's shown a Democrat can win in a border red state. I'm impressed with him. I was amazed at the thing that was going on with Gavin Newsom this week, where he invited Steve Bannon onto his show.
I know. Is that a good thing? I mean, people are always saying they want bipartisanship, but good grief, could you have picked somebody else?
Well, everybody's running for president is trying to find their lane, and I think Newsom is trying to find his lane. And one of the things that the two of them could agree on is that both Steve Bannon and Gavin Newsom hate Musk, and so he's using it for that.
But a lot of people aren't going to listen to that podcast, but they're just going to see that Gavin Newsom sat down with Steve Bannon, and they're just going to hate him for that. I don't, how many people are actually going to sit back and listen to the conversation and see whether or not it was a reasonable, conversation. I don't know that was. Would you, if you're advising Gavin Newsom and he's got this podcast, will you say, hey, I know who you should talk to? How about Steve Bannon? What do you think?
He would not be my first choice.
Yeah, me neither.
If I'm Newsom, I want to win a Democratic primary and at least hold my own state of California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That would not be my first choice either. Michael, we need to, I can't believe it already, we need to take a break, and I haven't even gotten to J.B. Pritzker or the father-son LaHoods, all the things I want to talk about. Michael Dorf's Democratic lawyer, he and I will be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
I'm talking with Michael Dorf, a Democratic lawyer. Who knows where all the bodies are buried in the state of Illinois? Probably buried some of them himself, Michael. J.B. Pritzker, he certainly seems to be impressing a lot of people.
He is running for president every day. He's been doing it since his last election. And he's now making the speeches in New Hampshire. He's going all over the country, and he is taking his lane. He's the one who is fighting every single issue that Trump is doing. The Democrats have this real spectrum these days. With you have Jim Carville on one end saying Democrats should stay totally out of it, let the Trumpers just collapse under their own weight. You have Hakeem Jeffries who's saying Democrats shouldn't be swinging at every pitch, but they should be choosing their pitches. And then you got people on the left, the more left side of the Democratic Party, like Pritzker now, like AOC, who are saying we've got to fight on every single front. And that's the lane that Pritzker is choosing right now.
Do you think it's the wisest lane? I mean, it seems like a good idea to me, but I don't have your experience.
Well, it's a good lane to get the base. And that may be where he's looking for, because he's got his own baggage, but if he comes out as the guy who, like he said in the at the convention, I'm a real billionaire and I know what a fake billionaire looks like, and I can take on these people because I don't have to worry about contributions. I don't have to worry about special interests, and I'm going to be as liberal as I possibly can. I think that probably is a good lane for him to take. We'll see how it works out, in the next months.
Ordinarily, people who are considering a run for the presidency are not only using this time to raise their profile, they're also using this time to raise money. I mean, I know J.B. Pritzker is wealthy, but do you think he still has to try to get some serious donors behind him?
Oh, I think everybody does, and I think Pritzker. What I would think if I was telling him what to do, I would say for your own committee, don't raise a lot of money so you can show that you are running without special interests. But in the meantime, have a bunch of super PACs who are supporting you, who can raise billions without having to, without any limitations at all.
Okay, I don't understand the ins and outs of campaign finance. Explain that to me again.
Sure. People who contribute to federal campaigns are bound by certain campaign limitations, and corporations cannot give money to a candidate's committee. And Pritzker can take the position that in my own presidential committee, we're not taking any money from special interests, we're not going to take any money from PACs, and we're not really going to be soliciting. But that makes him this big independent candidate. But at the same time, you can have super PACs, which cannot give money directly to candidates, but can raise millions and millions and millions of dollars without any campaign limits, without any corporate restrictions. and use all that money to do communications and advertisements in favor or against candidates.
So the PAC isn't really under JB's control. Like, I could set up a PAC and raise a bunch of money, and then I could run ads on my own. I think Michael Dorff is a fabulous guy, and I think he should be the next whatever. And is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And there's technically that super PAC is not supposed to talk directly to the candidate, but there are so many loopholes that the super PAC knows what the candidate wants the money spent on. And,
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You seem pretty certain that Pritzker is definitely on his way to running for president. What makes you so certain?
Because every action he has taken has been that way. He's given money to referenda in Ohio. He bankrolled one of that abortion referenda in Ohio when he didn't have to, and it's a swing state. He's making speeches in New Hampshire this early, and people don't make speeches in New Hampshire unless they're running for president. He's taking more and more national. He's trying to become the national spokesperson. Since right now the Democratic Party is technically leaderless, he is trying to become the national spokesperson, or we're going to take on MAGA, we're going to take on Doge, we're going to take on Trump.
You said the Democratic Party appears to be basically leaderless. I think that's an excellent description, and I can tell you from what I read on my text line and the calls that I get, the feedback I get at this station, it's like, where is fill in the blank X? Why isn't this person out there fighting for us? Why isn't that person out there fighting for us? And I've started just telling the people in the audience, look, we've got to do this ourselves. We are going to save ourselves in this election because there doesn't seem to be anybody who's really emerging, who's already in Congress or in the Senate. There doesn't seem to be somebody in one of those positions that seems to be ready to say, follow me, guys. I know I'm going to lead us on this fight. Am I missing something? Is there somebody you're going to go, oh, my God, but Joan, you got to pay attention to this congressperson or this senator? And I'm not saying that some of them aren't speaking out, but nobody seems to have really emerged as our Martin Luther King, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's right. Technically, Kamala is the titular head of the party, having had the nomination, but certainly she has not been taking that role. And no, there hasn't been anybody yet who can encapsulate what Democrats believe in. And part of that is I don't think any of us know yet what all Democrats believe in, except we're against Trump, we're against MAGA, and we have more empathy than the folks on the other side who have just made cruelty a plank of all their actions.
Yeah. I want you to focus on the other side of the aisle for a minute. Earlier this week, I think it was on Monday, Shia Kapos reported in Illinois Playbook that Ray LaHood, former Republican Illinois congressman, was U.S. Transportation Secretary, signed on to a letter with 59 other former members of Congress urging current congressional leaders to exercise constitutional powers to stop any one person from seizing control of the government. And that's ironic because one of the people in Congress who potentially could be fighting this is Ray LaHood's son, Darren, who is a current Republican congressman from Illinois and has been a big supporter, a very vocal supporter of Donald Trump. And apparently Ray told Shia that he didn't talk to his son about signing the letter. I spoke to Ray quite a while ago about some issue that he also did not talk to his son about. That must be a weird Thanksgiving table, Michael.
Well, they used to say that there were three types of Republicans. There were Wall Street Republicans who represented financial interests. There were Main Street Republicans, and there were Easy Street Republicans who only cared about tax breaks. And Ray LaHood was a classic Main Street Republican, Midwestern guy, believed in bipartisanship, who ended up working in the Obama administration. Darren LaHood is part of the fourth part of Republicans, which are the crazy MAGA Trumpers, and in part he's reflecting his district. And I think if Darren LaHood went against Trump, no matter how good a congressman he's been, how well he's represented his constituencies, he would be primaried the next day. So he has traded whatever values he picked up at the Thanksgiving table before he got elected. He's traded that purely for political survival.
Do you think that will still be the case if under Donald Musk's relationship with Elon Musk, suddenly we see attacks on Social Security and Medicare? I mean, there already are attacks on Medicaid. I mean, won't that affect how Republicans view this administration and what they want from their congresspeople?
I have been waiting to see what is the red line that couldn't be crossed. And it keeps moving and moving and moving. But I still think Social Security and Medicare is that red line. And if they really start messing with that, I think Musk is gone at that point.
But, he just gave Donald Trump a $100 million slush fund to do with whatever he chooses. What would it take? What would it take for Donald Trump to say, love Elon, he really meant well, but this was a bridge too far? What? Another?
I do think Social Security and Medicare is one of those things. As to what else, you and I have talked over the years. Is there something which is going to hurt Trump's ego enough that he dumps him? And Musk so far has come close, but he hasn't. He hasn't overshadowed him enough yet.
Unbelievable. And yet, Donald Trump holds a press conference in the Oval Office and basically sits there mute while Elon Musk talks to the media, and his 3-year-old son tells Donald Trump he's not the president and he should shush his mouth. I mean, come on. Where's that red line?
Well, he made Elon wear a suit the next time he came to the White House.
Did he?
Yeah. Elon finally put on a suit after everything going on with Zelensky about not wearing a suit, and so all the late night comics started showing, well, let's look at Elon in his T-shirt. So Elon did wear a suit the next time he came to the White House.
Jesus.
So
we live in weirdly interesting times, Michael. It's been too long. I miss talking to you on the radio. I hope you will come back soon.
It'd be a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
There has been a lot going on with ICE. Good time to check in with Fred Sau, who is the policy director at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Fred, how are you doing these days? I imagine it's stressful.
Thank you, Joan. Always happy to be back with you. We're getting through it. So yeah, I mean, every day seems like sometimes every hour presents a new challenge, but we're getting through.
You know, I thought it was so interesting that I saw an interview with Tom Homan, the border czar, who was, was complaining that the raids in Chicago particularly were not successly because there had been a huge campaign for people to know their rights, and that really made an unacceptable dent in the number of people that ICE agents were able to pull off the streets. And I was waiting for the woman, I believe it was a woman, who was interviewing him to say, so wait a minute, stop right there. So you're only going to be successful if people don't understand their rights and the law? But there was a part of me that was so proud of Chicago for getting the word out, telling people what they can and can't do, how to talk to these people, what to ask for. And Fred, a lot of that is you.
Well, some of it is me. A lot of it is our colleagues and our partners in this massive educational effort. I think the city and the state can also take credit for this. But yeah, the word that Homan used was well-educated, that people in Chicago are well-educated. And so, whenever this comes up, we kind of joke among ourselves that, Chicago is well-educated. and I think we could, if there's one upside to all of this, it's the fact that, we have been able to, just push good information out into the community, empower people to protect themselves, making sure that people are aware that yes, we here in the United States we have the Bill of Rights, and everybody has rights. And people should feel empowered to use them.
I want you to clarify one thing. People seem to be confused about is this idea of what it is to be a sanctuary city. And I try to explain this all the time, that it doesn't mean that you can kill someone and, show up to Chicago and be protected because it's a sanctuary city. No, that's not what it means. Right. Fred, how do you explain it when people ask what that means?
I just want to note here that Mayor Johnson appeared before that House Oversight Committee hearing last week, and I think he and the other mayors schooled the committee members on what exactly is involved here. So what this means is that local authorities, the police, other city agencies or state agencies, county sheriffs, are not going to be in the business of helping ICE do their business. Instead, police are going to focus on, real public safety threats, trying to catch perpetrators, and also welcoming immigrants and anybody else who has information to share about real threats to public safety. And encouraging them to come forward, to cooperate, and building those really good, trusting relationships with the community. It doesn't do anybody any good if any communities are too scared for their own sake to call the police, or to call 911. So that's the whole philosophy behind. We use the term welcoming city instead of sanctuary. As the mayor pointed out, crime rates in many of these communities are down, and that's because the police have been able to work with immigrants and many other vulnerable communities to address the needs, as opposed to helping ICE agents chase people down, or just scaring people into thinking that if I put in this call, I'm going to come under questioning myself.
Yeah, and that is what people need to understand. If, because people are like, well, I don't understand why cops can't work with ICE. Well, okay. Either you don't have the proper paperwork or somebody in your family doesn't, but you're a victim of domestic violence. Are you going to go to the police knowing that your entire family's ability to stay in the United States might be jeopardized? No, you're not. And that's what people need to remember, that there's some real important issues why cities need to sort of separate police from the ICE.
Exactly, Joan. Yeah, and I would note here as well that Mayor Harold Washington had the foresight to first create this policy back in this month in 1985. So this policy is 40 years old this month. And we've had the city leadership that has reaffirmed that policy, regardless of what you may think about some of the previous mayors. Every mayor since Mayor Washington has reaffirmed this policy in one way or another.
That's wonderful. I like it when, despite all the other differences and different programs and different ideas of how to improve a city, that's one thing that people agree on. Fred, we need to take a break, and we will be back. I'm talking to Fred Sau. He's one of the people who knows what's going on with immigration in this town as policy director at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. We are going to be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Fred Sau. He's the policy director at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. What is going on since Tom Homan got very disgusted with Chicago because all the people here seemed to know their rights? What has been going on since then?
Yeah, well, fortunately, ICE enforcement activity has slowed down somewhat. We're still getting reports of arrests, and ICE sightings in the community. So I don't want to say that it's ended altogether. But the ICE Agent Roadshow has since moved on to other cities, where they've tried to carry out operations in different places that are being targeted, and in some places they're also seeing similar results of people not opening their doors or not answering questions. But that said, this administration is still intent on trying to carry out its notion of mass deportation. And they're doing a number of different things. Probably the biggest news of late is that they're trying to require anybody who's undocumented and who didn't come in on a visa, didn't overstay a visa, to sign up to get themselves registered. Of course, and there are penalties for not registering or not being registered. But of course, the consequence of registering could very well be that you're giving your information, your name, your address to the federal government, and they can use that information to visit your home and try to deport you. Yeah. So that's fortunately that program is not taking effect for another month or so. But that's creating a lot of confusion, a lot of panic in the community, and that's. So we need to be, very, diligent in the work that we're doing to educate folks about, first off, who's covered by this, and then what are the consequences if you sign up, or what are the consequences if you don't sign up, and and then allow people to make the best informed decision that they can, and in the meantime, see if there are any ways to shut this down through a lawsuit.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about the Ukrainians who have come to this country, and a lot of them to the Chicago area, because of the war in Ukraine. Donald Trump said recently that it might be that he might be looking to send Ukrainians back to the tune of like 100,000 people. What do you know about that?
Well, yeah. So, this administration seems intent to try to end the current protections that many of the people who fled Ukraine currently enjoy. So, a lot of these folks came in on a parole program. They weren't granted visas. But they were allowed to come into the United States, with the thought that they would apply for asylum. Of course, asylum processing is very, very badly backlogged, in part because judges are quitting or getting fired. That said, there's rumblings about ending, allowing that parole to expire, which of course would leave so many people vulnerable to getting deported. We work very closely with a number of organizations that in turn work with the Ukrainian community. They are very worried, and especially after the blow up in the White House with President Zelensky last week, or I guess now 2 weeks ago. They're very worried about what's going to happen in their home country in Ukraine, and they're very worried that this president is going to side with Putin and just sell out Ukraine. So people would not only potentially be removed from this country, but sent back into a really dangerous situation.
So what would that look like if Trump follows through on that threat? I mean, would there be mass roundups? I mean, because we have tens of thousands of Ukrainians in this country right now. I mean, even logistically, how would that happen, Fred?
Yeah, we don't know, and it's kind of scary to even think about what this would look like. Many Ukrainians are currently covered by a program called temporary protected status. If that's allowed to lapse too, then all these people are known to the federal government in one way or another. The government has their names, their addresses, and in some cases their work information. It kind of boggles the mind. And Chicago, as you mentioned, Joan, is home to a very large Ukrainian population, including tens of thousands of people who relocated in the past, now 2 years, since the invasion, and what's going to happen? We don't know.
That just is, it's just all so unsettling. I guess the one bright spot is, after that big announcement that Gitmo was going to be just filled to the brims. Gitmo has indeed not. I mean, there are some people there, but it hasn't been the mass deportation that Trump promised. I don't know. Am I grabbing at straws here to find some kind of silver lining?
Well,
yes. The short answer is yes. We know that.
Well, and I think the silver lining came from the fact that the administration, they have just realized that they made their point, they put on the show, they created the spectacle, but it just became too costly, and too logistically difficult to be flying all these people to Cuba, and then keeping them detained in Cuba when they could have just as well kept them detained here in the United States, or Gitmo obviously has some very nasty connotations, which I think this administration was trying to play on, but. you can only do so much with the resources that you have. And we'll see what happens with this continuing resolution, and whether this administration is going to use any of that funding to on further detention and possibly on Gitmo, but at least for now, Gitmo is not being used. I guess this is the second time that Gitmo has been evacuated of late, and then there's all manner of litigation regarding access to lawyers and conditions there, and that probably also pushed them over to thinking, well, this just isn't worth it.
Fred, what's your biggest concern right now?
Yeah, well, I think it's just the uncertainty. We just, we have some ideas as to what's going to head our way. Many of the things that we were anticipating, for better or worse, have come to pass. But, that said, the Stephen Millers of the world and the Tom Homans of the world have had a few years to, think through what additional things they want to do. I know the thinking with this. I've heard that the thinking with this administration is to try to create as big a splash as they could in the first few months or so. So, maybe this big rush of activity is trying to cram as much as they can into a short period of time. But that said, there may be something else up their sleeve that we're not seeing yet, and that can cause real damage. And of course, they're not done with these raid operations, these immigration enforcement operations. ICE could come back to Chicago in a big way. Of course, we'll be ready, or as ready as we can be. But many people can still get hurt by this administration.
Yeah, absolutely. Though it was explained that, I don't know how many millions of people Donald Trump said he was going to deport, but that they would need how many border agents and ICE agents they would need to hire to make that happen. And Fred, I just don't think DOJ is going to let that happen because, we are purging the federal government of employees. We are not on a hiring binge.
Yeah, exactly. This is where the two main things that seem to be priorities with this administration are coming into tension. Yeah, career Justice Department people, the ones who would be, prosecuting, immigration offenses. They're getting let go, or they're quitting. Immigration judges are also stepping down. There have been at least three immigration judges here in Chicago that have left recently. So how this is all going to work is just it's just not super clear. There is talk now of this administration dusting off the old Alien Enemies Act from when John Adams was president back in 1798, to try to further speed up the pace of deportations. I think they don't quite realize that act only applies when there's an invasion. Or a threat of invasion. And I don't think anybody's threatening to invade the United States right now. Despite our threats to invade certain other countries. Who knows?
Well, I think that's one of the hallmarks of Donald Trump is he likes to keep people off balance. And he likes to be outrageous and make the big splash, which is why I've been hoping with my tiny little fingers crossed that, I know he wanted to make everybody think that, he was just going to accomplish everything in the first month and doing a lot of stuff and writing tons of executive orders. But I'm hoping that as time progresses, that he starts to remember how little he liked this job the first time. And what was it, 200 days he spent golfing in his first term? And I'm hoping that the golf starts becoming more attractive and signing executive orders becomes less attractive. So I guess we'll just have to cross our fingers and hope for that.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, again, he seems to have it in his mind that he has some kind of mandate that God spared him from the bullets in order to save America. I mean, I do have to wonder what kind of what is in his mind, and if as a result of all of this, he really believes that he has a mandate to carry out all these things. But yeah, I mean, but again, we will see. But that said, our work is not done. We still, we will still be, educating the community and trying to throw sand in the gears of as best as we can. And
well, Fred, along those lines, I've told my audience that it's going to be a long haul. And not everybody can do everything, but people need to find the issue that they really feel that they care about. And for some people, that issue is going to be immigration. For those people that are listening to us right now, Fred, just regular folks, not lawyers, what can they do?
Yeah, well, I think one really important thing to do is to help out your local immigrant serving organizations. There are many organizations throughout the community. Many of those organizations are affiliated with us, with ICRR, and just volunteer, whether it's helping fill out citizenship applications, or getting trained on how to give a Know Your Rights presentation, or even just providing support and helping people navigate to get the resources that they need, and then I think another really important piece is just counteracting this really ugly narrative that's out there. That's I'm not going to try to repeat everything, nor should I. But immigrants are a net plus to this community. They help enrich our community. They make communities safer. We start businesses. We help create jobs. So we have to get past this really horrible demonization of immigrants that's happening these days.
Fred Tsao, thank you so much for being here. Fred is the policy director at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. That is going to do it for me today. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez is, of course, next. You have the same homework you have every weekend. Find something that brings you joy. Find something that brings you joy, because this is going to be a long fight, and we've got to stay strong and not get worn out. I will see you Monday. Have a great weekend. Good night.